How many Mr. Pickles will it get? Let's see if this cabinet has what it takes.
Video Game Vegas.
He's so cute.
Friends, Video Game Vegas. And this is my review of Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars Virtual Pinball Machine. I base my arcade cabinet reviews on 10 categories, which you'll find detailed in the text below. For each positive in a category, or more positive than negative in a category, I'll score it a Mr. Pickle. The more Mr. Pickles it gets, of course, the better. Based upon the total score and my overall thoughts, I'll recommend if you should get it, vet it, or in other words, put it through its paces in person before you buy, or forget it. Some disclaimers before I get into my review. All my product reviews are based solely upon the item or items I receive. Some may get the same product and have no issues. Some may have more issues than I did. And maybe I get no issues at all, my hope for any product. Or maybe a majority of the specific product performs or presents differently than the one I got. But when it comes down to it, what I get is what I review. I don't acquiesce to excuses like, I must have gotten a bad one or a good one, or ruminate shipping issues if I had it shipped, though I may note something. But plainly put, I'm an advocate for good quality with a strong emphasis towards quality control. And if a company wants their product seen favorably, then they need to make this a paramount part of their philosophy and put it to action. So what every customer receives is an acceptable, if not preferred, exceptional experience every time. Some may think it unfair not to put a more significant emphasis on the law of averages, and I appreciate that opinion. But my reviews are meant to tell my experience on exactly what I got, good or bad. Second, during my reviews, I often share personal stories, ideas, and thoughts beyond just the product I'm speaking of. That alone works out well, but from time to time, I also like to make mention to individuals, usually to give a positive shout out or to cite a contribution. I want to make sure to make it very clear that the two should never be lumped together. The people I mention under no circumstances should be linked to nor associated with my personal feelings, opinions, or statements that I might share in other places in the video. All my sentiments are my own and only related to me. And lastly, the footage presented in my videos of arcade cabinets I review or showcase may contain updated parts, decorations, software, or other bits and bobs not included in a standard purchase. Please make sure to check advertised listings or reach out to retailers or companies to confirm complete contents in box. Now let's get to it. The very first electronic game I ever remember playing, all the way back when I was a wee lad, was pinball. My grandpa would take me to a place called Murphy's, a bar with a small lounge restaurant. He would sit up at the bar with his buddies, and I would sit in the booth in the back and enjoy a Coca-Cola with a cherry in it and watch a TV mounted near the ceiling in the corner. This is where I also discovered a little show called Star Trek, which I would actually pronounce as Star Trek for years. And so as not to confuse anyone, because there are so many shows carrying that name now, this was the original Star Trek, the one with the legendary William Shatner as Captain Kirk. I instantly fell in love with the show, and please indulge me this small moment that may at first seem out of place in an arcade cabinet review, but I promise you, it will become clear shortly and does serve a significant reason for being here. I feel very fortunate to have lived at a time, all before the activist insurgency, to take over huge swaths of media and entertainment. Our movies, TV shows, comic books, video games, you name it. making it their mission to attempt to indoctrinate everyone into false and harmful ideologies. Properties we used to love, now repurposed, in name only, as avenues for ill intent. A wide majority of media, for at least the last decade or so, has been hit with some sort of focused propaganda inserted into it. And you might be thinking, stuff like this has cropped up from time to time since the dawn of media. But in my lifetime, I've never seen anything as exponentially bad as what we're experiencing today. So many of our favorite old franchises, like Star Trek, are now just used specifically as tools. One might even call them skin suits, used to exploit longtime fans through nostalgia, as well as young impressionable minds, disguised and designed to replace principled ideals with unscrupulous delusion, and villainize and cancel those who don't believe in and agree with everything, and I do mean everything, that they do. They use clever sounding acronyms attached to words meant to sound noble, but time and time again, they end up revealing a sinister nature. DEI, the most notable acronym in their arsenal, which could have championed something great, instead pushed the exact opposite. In reality, it stands for division, exclusion, and intolerance, even notable idiocy, and that was its true goal. It ended up wreaking havoc throughout the entertainment industry and pretty much destroyed everything it touched, including putting people in real jeopardy when used at times in hiring practices for positions that required a high level of experience and competence to keep people safe. Instead, decided placement upon traits like race, gender, and sexuality, instead of on the best qualified. And those who dare disagree with things like this are often called every dishonest and mismatched name in the book, such as fascist, bigot, misogynist, various other types of ists, phobes, and z's. And though the slingers of these false categorizations don't realize they instantly lose their argument, stance, and credibility the moment they do it, the labels themselves can still incite harm to those targeted. Unfortunately, the repetition of this name-calling and spread of so much false rhetoric over the span of many years has gone way beyond just polluting favored franchises. It's transformed into something truly dangerous, culminating into acts of lawlessness and real-world violence, spurred on by those willing to do anything to force everyone to accept and affirm their fantasy dogma as some sort of new real, and demand everyone fall in with the lie. Silencing, dehumanizing, and worse sometimes, anyone who disproves their fiction by using simple truth and facts. And with the recent outbreak of people actually celebrating murder and wishing it upon those who they feel hurt their feelings, claiming everything they don't want to hear is some sort of quote-unquote hate speech, the mask has fully come off, and no amount of points or labels they add to their victim cards will ever make it okay. One great benefit to free speech that ultimately backfired on these unprincipled individuals, the same ones who often claim they're all about acceptance and love, is that everyone can see who they truly are and just how vile they can be. But if I can imbue anything here, is please do not resort to their violence. Use your voice instead to defeat corrupt ideologies like pro-crime and anti-reality, and make sure evil can't hide in the shadows. And as I've always advocated, vote with your wallet. Be wary of any new releases using the names of familiar titles you grew up with. Look behind the scenes to the people making your movies, TV shows, and video games. And don't support the ones whose real purpose and objective is to re-educate against candor and integrity. I am extremely thankful we got so many years of fantastic entertainment before this all started. More than one can consume in a lifetime, in fact. Hopefully, we'll see a resurgence of this again someday. But when it comes to Star Trek, at least at the making of this video, anything before 2005 is pretty safe and entertaining, though I did find the first two J.J. Abrams directed Star Trek movies to be a bit fun. As I mentioned and promised, there is a purpose for sharing these thoughts in this particular video. Pinball, out of all entertainment media, seems to be the one place avoiding most, if not all, this lunacy, at least as far as my experience. The one safe haven I can escape to without worrying about the insertion of nefarious, sometimes subliminal, messaging. Each time I reminisce about my younger years in my videos, I often feel bad knowing that some might never get to enjoy, as kids, something made for the sole purpose of entertainment, just for fun, without all the brainwashing crap injected. I want to personally thank you for indulging me in this small, yet very meaningful segment, as this issue is really important to me and affects so many things we love. Now let's get back to Murphy's. Sometimes one of the waitresses who worked there would sneak me a plate of fries, which when my grandpa would catch eye of it would tell me, "You better be able to eat your dinner tonight." I miss those times. After the episode of Star Trek would end, I would ask my grandpa for a quarter to play the pinball machine they had there. I remember the feeling every time I played it. Though I couldn't tell you the name of the machine, the lights, the bells, hitting the ball and seeing stuff react to my actions was pure magic, and I was cast as the magician. That feeling would never leave me, and I was hooked for life. For quite a few Christmases, my grandpa would buy me these small tabletop pinball machines, which would usually break in a few days because I play the heck out of them. I couldn't get enough of pinball. Eventually, though, my interest in the silver ball would wane quite a bit, once a little thing known as video games entered the picture. Blasting aliens, chomping ghosts, I know, monsters, jumping barrels, and exploring strange new and fantastical worlds on various monitor screens became my new passion. It would take one extraordinary pinball machine to get me back in the flipper game. That machine? Gottlieb's Haunted House. People who follow my channel know I'm a huge fan of Halloween, but that alone probably wouldn't have brought me back to the pinball space. It was a gameplay feature in that machine that took things to a whole other level, literally. Haunted House had a small playfield underneath the main one, separated by a clear see-through panel. Now it also had a raised playfield above the main one as well, but it was that lower one that really blew me away. It was like looking into another world. I was so fascinated, in fact, that it shifted my arcade play back towards pinball again. Eventually, though, video games would again grab most of my attention, and pinball, though I still played from time to time, would take a back seat. But one full circle moment during my pinball journey brought a true tear to my eye. And that's when a company called Data East came out with their own Star Trek pinball machine, replete with an amazing beaming effect on the back glass that would make the crew of the Enterprise appear and disappear during gameplay. This pinball machine instantly transported me back to all those great times with my grandpa, back at Murphy's, sipping Cokes and sneaking fries. Now, I did find out much later there was a Star Trek pinball machine before Data East's version, but I didn't get to see that one until many years later at the Las Vegas Pinball Hall of Fame, and that one couldn't hold a candle to Data East's masterpiece. Data East knew how to make great pinball machines, crafting gem after gem at the time, like their Star Wars pinball machine, with its large animated R2-D2 figure on the playfield, and Tommy, based on the musical by The Who, which would allow the player to experience a sort of blindness, hearkening to the film's protagonist by covering up the flippers so you couldn't see them at various times during gameplay. And this wasn't gimmick pinball. Data East machines were meticulously designed, at least the ones I played, to shoot and flow great while remaining well balanced, making it so I never felt ripped off due to quick unfair drains, while still putting up a challenge to keep me coming back for more. When you saw the Data East logo, you knew you were in for fun. I know I could sit here all day and rattle off pinball machines I loved, but I'm only going to speak about one more before I get into the meat of this review. The topic of this review, in fact. A pinball machine so cool that it's another one that pulled a lot of my time away from video games in the arcade. That machine, of course, is Bally Midway's Attack from Mars. I remember the first time I saw this machine. It was in a small arcade area at a Red Robin restaurant where me and my friends were going to enjoy some hot wings, fries, and ranch dressing. At first I didn't pay it much mind. It looked cool for sure, but at a glance, it seemed like just another pinball machine. But then its most amazing feature danced into action, and just like Haunted House before it, transcended a mere pinball experience. There were little rubber aliens on the playfield that once an event triggered would wiggle and jiggle about. This drove my giddiness meter well past the point of no return. I couldn't stop smiling. Anyone who knows Video Game Vegas knows I'm all about the wiggle. And when I play Attack from Mars pinball, I don't care about high scores or how long I can keep the ball in play. I just want to see that wiggle action. Wiggly-o-rama, people. So when licensed 3/4 scale arcade machines became a thing for the home, I started hoping that one of these companies would come out with a virtual pinball cabinet. If I could only have one, I hoped for Haunted House, but pondered the notion of an Attack from Mars as a close second. Lo and behold, both came true. First, a company called Toy Shock came to the market with their licensed 3/4 scale virtual pinball machine, skinned as a Haunted House. Though it looked the part, unfortunately, there were major issues with its gameplay and comfort. But I would soon be surprised again by the company Arcade1Up when they announced their virtual pinball line, including 3 cabinets, each with their own individual art packages, and 10 virtual tables unique to each one. 2 of them were generically themed, one after Star Wars and the other after Marvel, but the final one was an Attack from Mars. Now I did ponder for a moment the possibility of having all 3, because I wanted more than 10 virtual tables to play on, but I couldn't get past some of the images Arcade1Up and their partners chose for the Marvel and Star Wars variants, artwork hearkening to Disney's propaganda machine related to matters I spoke about earlier regarding dangerous ideologies, and then voting with one's wallet. Arcade1Up's virtual pinball machines were slated to be their most expensive product at the time, to my recollection, at $550 apiece. But if it was a winner and could bring me that ultimate pinball experience I craved in my own home arcade, I was willing to pay that full price, which I ended up doing. But did Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars end up being worth it? Was it the answer to all my pinball prayers? Let's find out. The look of the cabinet. Arcade1Up has crafted one beautiful cabinet here. This is a masterpiece of shape, size, and design. If you're building an arcade at home using 3/4 scale size machines, then this will fit quite nicely in that arrangement. The art package unequivocally gives an Attack from Mars commercial pinball aesthetic, and I like it. And though upon closest inspection, the print doesn't quite reach the crisp levels I enjoy on some of my other cabinets, Arcade1Up has still done an admirable job here. The machine also has a light-up back glass, evenly lit across its surface, and it's a true stunner. Out of all the licensed virtual pinball machines I've purchased, 4 in total, Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars, by far, is the best looking. And I'm happy to report not a ding or scratch on it. Perfect out of the box, like any brand new product should. Cabinet structure and assembly. The body portion of Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars is built like a tank, and it comes pre-assembled. You do have to attach the legs to it, and build the back box and attach that as well. But unlike the build process for other Arcade1Up machines I owned at the time, Attack from Mars came together exceedingly quick. This was the first time I watched my brother put together one of my machines and thought, this would have been a snap for me. And as always, I thank him for taking the time to build this one. And thank you, Arcade1Up, for making this closer to a plug-and-play experience. The machine is also the perfect height for comfortable play. Don't let the smaller footprint fool you. Bigger doesn't always mean better, and in fact, Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars is the best height of all the virtual pinball machines I've owned. Whether standing up or sitting on a stool, I can play it effortlessly. Physical controls. Oh man, you want something that feels like you're hitting actual flippers on a mechanical pinball machine? Then Arcade1Up has you covered here. They added physical solenoids to the inside of their machines that fire when you hit the flippers. The effect is nothing short of spectacular. These also fire off when bumpers and such are hit during a game, adding so much to the immersion. Now these could have been dialed up a little bit higher to give more of a sensation, but what we have here is exceptional and near perfect. Arcade1Up Attack from Mars employs 2 ball launch methods, a launch button for its titular title, Attack from Mars, and a plunger for the other tables that use that control method, though you can use either method on any of the tables. The launch button itself gets the job done, but unfortunately, it's a small standard arcade button rather than the larger one found on a real machine. A bummer for sure, but definitely not a deal breaker. The plunger, on the other hand, though it looks the part and has the most accurate traditional look out of all the virtual pinball machines I've owned, unfortunately, feels harsh when pulling it back and gives an unsatisfying thunk when it makes contact with the machine. Thankfully though, the physical plunger action matches up precisely with the digital action on the screen, allowing for skill shots to be made on tables that employ them accurately. But now, unfortunately, I must address the elephant in the room. Arcade1Up's control method for nudging the virtual environment. Arcade1Up employs the use of accelerometers to allow one to physically nudge the cabinet and affect the action on the digital table like on a real pinball machine. But Arcade1Up's implementation is so bad that it's essentially broken, an inconsistent mess. Sometimes your nudges and taps register, sometimes not at all, even with the harshest of hits. But when they do register, they're often time delayed, and that makes this feature pretty much useless. And it doesn't matter the level of sensitivity you set it to in the options menu, or at least out of the box. Arcade1Up did release a software patch to try to fix it, but it was a complete joke. It increased the sensitivity for sure, but setting it anywhere above midpoint would cause the machine to continually nudge itself until it tilted your game. Your hands didn't even need to be on the cabinet. And setting it just under that, though slightly improved, still had some time delay, enough to make using it mostly ineffective. Now for me, I'm not a guy who nudges as part of my playstyle. In fact, I rarely do. So not having this feature function the way it should isn't the end of the world for me. But if nudging is an important part of the way you play, this could be a deal breaker. I'm disappointed that Arcade1Up didn't also include an alternate nudging method like additional physical buttons to control it. This has been a tried and true technique for years in the virtual pinball space. I think if Arcade1Up would have added this in, they would have saved themselves, and their customers, a lot of heartache. As for the other controls in the cabinet, the non-gameplay controls, volume, navigation, and power, they're more than acceptable and get the job done. Nothing to complain about there. Picture quality. There are two monitors on Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars, a small one for a DMD display, which shows scores and other unique animations specific to each virtual table, and a larger 24-inch 1080p display, outputting at a 720p resolution for the playfield. The DMD display gets the job done, but I wish Arcade1Up and Zen Studios would have added an option to stretch the image across the whole surface, because the screen shape Arcade1Up went with, in order to keep the original aspect ratio of the graphics, had to crop everything to the middle, losing around, to my eye, about 2/3 of the screen's total real estate. It's almost too tiny to fully enjoy. The playfield monitor, on the other hand, is the right size for the job. It displays good uniformity and keeps a consistent image no matter what angle you look at it from. However, it does tend to lean a bit too bright, which unfortunately causes it to lose most of its contrast highlights. And it doesn't help that Arcade1Up took this 1080p monitor and reduced its resolution to 720p. Now, I might have been fine with that if everything graphically looked great, but there are some issues. There is a good amount of jagginess everywhere. It still looks mostly acceptable, but coupled with the next issue, it kind of falls apart. There is some sort of flickery or stuttery effect on the ball as it moves, like maybe some kind of frame skipping was applied. And the effect is so bothersome to my eyes that I find it hard to play for more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Now, I can still get some good pinball in during that time, but sometimes I wish I could play longer. And these shortcomings were 100% avoidable, but Arcade1Up, as they often do, chose not to use the right tools for the job, such as powerful enough processing to make everything run properly and look its best. And for what they're charging for these machines, they could have easily sprung for a way beefier PCB. And I heard rumblings that better specs were considered, but there may have been an issue getting hands on enough of them at the time. But I would have rather waited for something that could make the experience fantastic and memorable, rather than getting something substandard and obviously rushed to market. And this is nothing new for Arcade1Up. They are infamously known for cutting corners on essential areas in most of their products, which may be good for their bottom line, but it ultimately hurts each machine they do this on, and shows a true lack of respect for the properties they're attempting to represent. And what makes matters worse is they're working with Zen Studios. Zen Studios is notoriously known for designing their programs unoptimized and way too resource hungry. This pinball team-up, from the beginning, sounded like a recipe for disaster. Before I move on to the next category, I have to mention the plexi overlay Arcade1Up chose over traditional glass that sits above the playfield monitor. It has some sort of weird texture to it, which causes a bit of distortion to the image. I'm sure this was done to cut cost, but what a crappy decision. At first I thought, and hoped, the textured plexi might have been the cause of that flickering effect I mentioned earlier. But alas, after I purchased a glass top to replace Arcade1Up's debacle, which greatly improves the monitor image by the way, it didn't fix the ball flicker. Sound. This is quite possibly the best feature on the cabinet. Arcade1Up has created a fantastic aural experience here. I don't know how they did it, but there's a surround sound effect that envelops you as you play. It's crisp and clear, with just enough bass to make everything come to life. Arcade1Up blows away the competition here, as far as a 2-speaker configuration. Games and gameplay. 10 tables are included on Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars. They include Attack from Mars, of course, along with Fishtails, The Getaway High Speed 2, Hurricane, Junkyard, Medieval Madness, No Good Gophers, Red and Ted's Roadshow, Tales of the Arabian Nights, and Whitewater. All in all, a decent collection to start with. And I say start because I wasn't sure if 10 tables would be enough for me, given my original plan to only have one pinball cabinet in my home arcade. After having it for a while, 10 tables were definitely not enough and had me wanting for more. And it didn't help that one of the tables, Whitewater, was a broken experience out of the box. It was laggy and the ball movement was inconsistent. In fact, the ball would teleport around the table at times like it was freaking Nightcrawler from the X-Men. And believe me, that's not a positive. Arcade1Up would eventually fix Whitewater with the update I've mentioned earlier, and though the gameplay was much improved and a good experience now, it never quite felt as polished as the other tables. All tables, with Whitewater now included after the update, play great with no lag. Now the experts will tell you that all virtual pinball machines have some degree of lag. But with that in mind, let's just say that Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars doesn't suffer a bit when it comes to hitting the flipper buttons and seeing the action immediately on the screen. There is still that matter of the flickery effect on the ball though. Arcade1Up claims that all tables on this machine run at 60 frames per second, but I do think that there is some frame skipping magic going on, or something to that effect, because that flickering doesn't look natural. And like I mentioned before, it gives me a fair bit of eye strain. Getting back to the number of tables included on this machine, the real problem stems from Arcade1Up's content delivery philosophy when it comes to their arcade cabinets. Arcade1Up refuses to look beyond the buy a new cabinet to get more games route. Instead of implementing something like they did on another one of their products, the Infinity Game Table, a tabletop device that plays tablet-like games. The Infinity Game Table can connect to an online store where people can purchase and download more titles. Arcade1Up had a golden opportunity here with their virtual pinball line, especially working with a company like Zen Studios, since Zen Studios' majority business model is selling and reselling tables digitally on all types of platforms. But in typical Arcade1Up fashion, they instead decided to make 3 lockdown machines, each with only 10 tables, without the ability to add more. Arcade1Up just banked on people buying more machines, and this time it backfired on them, causing them to get lapped by some of the competition. Arcade1Up's foray into the virtual pinball space became nothing more than a footnote. But something was about to happen that made owning one actually worth it to me. I'd like to give a monumental shout out to some amazing community members, Mystery Encoder and the members of Team Encoder, who created a soft mod that allows people to add more tables to their cabinets. The one I'm using is called the A1 Pinner version 3.9, and because it's a soft mod, there's no need to mess with hardware. I just connect my PC to my Arcade1Up via a USB cable and add everything digitally to the stock PCB. Now, it actually takes a bit more than that to get everything up and running, and this is why I want to also give a huge shout out to content creator Kongs R Us. His modding tutorials over the years have been an invaluable resource to the home arcade community. Kongs R Us did a fantastic tutorial for the A1 Pinner mod, which I'll leave a link to it below. I'm also going to leave a link to his channel because he has so many worthwhile videos, and he's just an all-around great guy. Here's a quick overview of what the A1 Pinner mod offers. It allows you to add for free all the tables found on Arcade1Up's Marvel and Star Wars cabinets, along with ones from Farsight Studios' Pinball Arcade Android. Yes, you can now play tables like Haunted House, Black Hole, the two classic Elvira tables, Addams Family, Star Trek The Next Generation, Gorgar, Centaur, Funhouse, the Pinbot Trilogy, Black Knight 2000, and so many more. You also have access to Zen Pinball Android. You do have to purchase tables for that one, but I believe Sorcerer's Lair comes free. In total, when pulling from all these resources, this mod gives you access to around 200 tables. And that, my friends, is what I call an acceptable library of games. And if you kept an eye closely on the footage throughout this video, you'll see I'm actually showcasing the majority of tables available in this mod. It may be worth a rewind. Now, I do have to mention something else about this mod for those who might be considering getting an Arcade1Up because of what this mod offers. Though most of the tables play amazing, there are a few intensive titles in Farsight Studios' Pinball Arcade that do suffer a bit of lag. Pinball Arcade also doesn't have access to some of Arcade1Up's hardware functionality, such as the solenoids, utilization of the DMD display to show DMD data, and the use of the plunger, but you can use the launch button, which works great. For me, these issues are incredibly small when compared to what Mystery Encoder and Team Encoder have given us here, and for free. They took their own personal time to take our arcade cabinets to the next level. Thank you, Mystery Encoder and Team Encoder, for everything you do for the home arcade community. But wait, there's even more. Team Encoder and Mystery Encoder are now working on an upcoming hardware mod for Arcade1Up's Virtual Pinball Machines. They'll soon be offering an upgrade to replace Arcade1Up's stock PCB with much better hardware. This will not only provide access to all the tables from the A1 Pinner mod, but even more tables as well, and much better performance, getting rid of the lag barrier on the intensive titles, and providing some amazing graphic options that can make these tables look even better. It'll have a much cleaner user interface and a simpler way to set everything up. Kongs R Us and Mystery Encoder did a live stream showcasing just what this baby can do. I'll be leaving a link to that as well. Let's just say, it looks like a game changer. And you best believe I'm gonna support this new Team Encoder venture. They upgraded my Arcade1Up for free with their soft mod, and now I'm going to give back by purchasing their new hardware mod project. Thank you guys again for bringing out the true potential of our home arcade machines. Customer support. I'm not happy with Arcade1Up's customer support here, but I'm also not surprised. It took Arcade1Up way too long to release a fix to take care of some of the issues I mentioned in this video, not to mention complete radio silence while we waited. And then when they did finally release the fix, it didn't fix everything, and they never released another fix again. It's been years. This machine should have never been release broken in the first place. No Mr. Pickle here. Other annoyances beyond what I've already discussed? Thankfully, no. The problems that exist on Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars stink, but I'm happy I don't have to list a bunch more here. Is the cabinet fun? Yes. And with the A1 Pinner mod, it takes things to a whole new stratosphere. The Zen Studios tables that don't come stock on Attack from Mars actually have a noticeably less flicker effect on the ball and play much smoother. It's not completely gone, but I can play those tables for much longer. And Farsight Studios Pinball Arcade? There is absolutely no flickery effect, just smooth gameplay, allowing me to bang flippers as long as I want. But is the cabinet fun enough with just the stock tables? Again, I'm gonna say yes. but just barely. The flickery effect hampers a lot of the enjoyment. Value for price. So is Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars Virtual Pinball Machine worth it at $550? No. This machine released with too many problems and not enough tables to justify that price. And you won't believe what Arcade1Up did next. They actually had the stones to raise the price to $750. Did they add more games? No. Did they release an updated version with every feature working now? No. They just arbitrarily, without explanation, raised the prices on the current stock on a whim one day. Some speculated inflation played a part, but the sheer lack of Arcade1Up's awareness boggles the mind. So what is a fair price for this machine? In the state you get it in, brand new out of the box, I'd say it's worth $200 with free shipping. And if you want to account for inflation on this or any of the cabinets I've reviewed, adding $100 to the price, I feel, is reasonable. But do not pay more than $300 for this machine. Now let's pickle this one. So, adding up the tally of all the categories, how many Mr. Pickles does Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars Virtual Pinball Machine get? 5 Mr. Pickles out of 10. Vet it. Arcade1Up fast-tracked their virtual pinball line in order to compete in a new space, and it cost them. This is probably the biggest disappointment I've ever experienced with an Arcade1Up product, because pinball deserves so much better. But here's the crazy thing. Even though I can't fully recommend this cabinet, it is still, by far, the best licensed consumer grade virtual pinball machine on the market. Now I admit, I haven't tried out the upgraded Toy Shock 3/4 scale machines. I heard they fixed the lag with a more powerful PCB, and I do dig some of their new artwork designs. But they still only come with 12 tables without the ability to add more. And the cabinet size also remains the same, making it uncomfortable for me to play standing up. The sharp corners where you lay your palms are still there, which causes pain the longer I play. But with all that, Toy Shock still comes in at second place. As for the other player in the game, AtGames, I would avoid any of their online products like the plague, which includes their virtual pinball machines. The biggest problem with AtGames virtual pinball machines is you'll never be allowed to own them. In fact, their 4KP is the only home arcade product I have that I don't own, and that doesn't sit right with me, especially when I paid them in full for it, fair and square. Many in the community have also experienced the misfortune of buying a 4KP, and I'm glad they've also shared their terrible experiences to help others avoid making the same mistake. And though I could go on and on here, I've already laid out the many reasons one should avoid buying the 4KP in my video review, as well as in a follow-up video. I'll leave links to those below if you're interested. Now I'd like to do something a little different here before I end this review. I'd like to ponder how the final score of Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars might have changed if I factored in mods. Let's take a look at the mod I currently have installed, the A1 Pinner. This alone added a large amount of tables to my machine, which would have definitely earned it a Mr. Pickle in the Games and Gameplay category, moving the score up to a 6. Now a 6 is still a vet it recommendation, but it goes to show how modding can improve the experience. Now let's take a look at the upcoming Mystery Encoder Team Encoder hardware mod, and speculate how it could affect the final score. Like the A1 Pinner mod, it adds a bunch of new games to the cabinet, giving it a Mr. Pickle in the Games and Gameplay category, bringing the score up to a 6. Then from the livestream demonstration, it looks like the new hardware can enhance the graphics, possibly getting rid of that flicker effect on the ball, which in that case would give it a Mr. Pickle in the picture quality category, bringing the score up to a 7. Then I saw some decent nudging functionality with this new hardware, which would give it another Mr. Pickle in the physical controls category, bringing the score up to an 8. And an 8 out of a 10 is definitely a full recommendation from me, showing that modding can transform a substandard product into something worthwhile. Pinball is one of the coolest gaming inventions of all time, and my grandpa introduced me. He was such an important part of my life and a big part of my arcade journey. From pinball to electromechanical machines, and finally to video games. I wish he could have experienced the home arcade I built, but I know he's smiling down on me, and I know I'll see him again someday. I imagine him standing there at the pearly gates with a big bucket of never-ending quarters, ready to show me what arcades in heaven have to offer. This video is for my grandpa. For those who would like to see more of Arcade1Up's Attack from Mars, I'm leaving a link to my home arcade tour video, Welcome to the Video Game Vegas Arcade, where you can see it from even more perspectives. And with that, safe travels everyone. And remember, you always have a right to your opinion, but only I have a right to mine. Until next time, stay wiggly, my friends.